your table, Jack.
Okay. Welcome to, I think, our 5th gathering of Riverbed Poetry. There's just a few dozen of us here, so it'll probably go quickly. Of course, Luna Wolf is here with us. The theme this week is mountains. And I had a whole teaching I was thinking about doing, but instead I'll kind of share with you my thoughts on my way here about mountains. And I was kind of thinking how, a mountain, the highest point of a mountain involves the lowest point staying where it was. A mountain is like an accumulation of earth. So it's earth reaching the highest point that it's able to reach. And I was thinking that, the earth is pushed up to be a mountain. It isn't exactly that it snows and becomes a mountain. So, everything that is at the top of the mountain or in the middle of the mountain has come from below. It doesn't come out of the sky. Although there is dust and that is something. But even that dust came from the earth. And so everything that's at the top knows the below. But the below doesn't know the top. And I was kind of thinking that in terms of youth and adults, or maybe youth and the elderly, that the elderly know the youth because they've been there, and the youth only think they know the elderly because they know it all, but they haven't been there. So like the mountain, like being elderly or adult or something, is this age pushing up. And it's built on what was before. You can't be old without having been young, but you can be young without getting old. And then I was thinking, I wonder if it's a bit fair or balanced that the youth doesn't know the elderly, although it thinks it does. Mm-hmm. Doesn't know what it is to be old. Mm-hmm. But the old do know what it is to be young. Mm-hmm. But the old forget because they're old. And maybe that forgetfulness is this balancing of they can know, they once knew, they have it in them to know, but they're forgetful. And then I started thinking, does a mountain forget? Does a mountain have this long life and short memory? Does the mountain forget the levelness of the earth? Does the mountaintop forget, sea level, or the level of the low earth? And then I was thinking, I could feel like if I wasn't driving, this could have been a poem. I would have just, rather than thought, I would have just been writing and see where it goes. And then I started thinking that I wonder if the mountain isn't forgetful, but it never bothers to remember. So I wondered if maybe the mountain doesn't remember and it doesn't forget, but it's present for and perhaps aware of all that goes on, eons and eons. And maybe that is why it rises. Because it's not hanging on to remembering or participating in with the mind. It's just present for and supportive of. And maybe that's what wisdom looks like. So anyway, that's about as far as I got. I felt like it was maybe going a bunch of different directions, and maybe I could or could not tie it all together and make it a nice little, I see, the whole poem was actually not about the mountains, or I didn't know if it would do that or if it would just kind of spin off into, okay, I have a few strands and they're gonna find different places in my mind or my writing. Anyway, so I thought what we could do is sit in a brief meditation and consider that as we get higher towards the peak of the mountain, we are more narrow. And a mountain is always wider at its base, what we might call stable. But when we hear the word narrow, we tend to think in terms of a negative, right? Anything that follows narrow tends to be, in the English language anyway, something more negative. Although if we say thin, then it has this sense of being positive. Even though thin and narrow are essentially the same. And so as the mountain rises, it's narrower. But I would say another way to think of it is that it's more focused. And the base of the mountain is fairly indistinct. And so I was thinking, if we sit as a mountain, right, we can feel a wide base and a moderately wide heart and a somewhat less wide mental focus. And maybe as we reach our top, we find our thinnest, narrowest focus. And that focus is born of the base. It grew from there, like the mountain grows from the flat earth, the level earth. invite you back when you feel ready. Feel okay? Questions, thoughts? Do you have a pen? Mm-hmm. So I thought what we'd do is we would just write a line, pass it back and forth, and add a line. So this is after a line in a Mary Oliver, which is How I Go to the Wood. And so I just changed it to How I Go to the Mountain. So that'll be our starter. And you can just add a word or a couple words or a line. You don't have to know where it's going or what tone it is. Remember, one line can argue with the previous or depart from it. What we basically want to do is not feel stressed about the practice. It's about the process, not the product. Thank you. And we don't have to fill the page. We could maybe go on to a second page if we wanted. And really at any point somebody could feel like, I think I've written the last line. Or perhaps they receive it and they read it and they think, oh, I think you just handed me a whole poem. So they can, indicate as such.
Might be done.
It might be done. Oh, yeah. Do you want to read it?
Okay. How I go to the mountain. In reverence, I feel all who blossom in reverence. The language of the earth, the tongue of the sky, quiet, knowing nourishment. All voices wrapped in silence, wrapped in silence. Steadying anticipation, readying, I walk and listen.
Is it titled Silent Mountain? Or Mountain Silences? What do you think? Valley of Silence?
Yeah, working together. Language of the mountain language.
Valley of Silences. Hey, that was fun. I'm gonna read. I haven't really figured out how this thing works very well. Very confusing to me. Okay. So maybe I'll read a couple poems, or you can read some if you want to. I have a few on this mountain theme here. This one's from Bethany Wren. Take me to the mountains, for that's where I belong. Just birds and trees and wind and leaves and silence as my song. That felt good after the one we wrote. Oh, and that's called Take Me to the Mountains, with the same, the opening title. This is from Lipo. If you were to ask me why I dwell among green mountains, I should laugh silently. My soul is serene. The peach blossom flowers, the morning water. There is another heaven and earth beyond the world of men. This is from Jody Lynn. The tallest peaks I have ever seen belong to mountains that made me. How I used to curse those steep slopes that taught me to touch stars. There's another Lipo. All the birds have flown up and gone. A lonely cloud floats leisurely by. We never tire of looking at each other, only the mountain and I. I have one more here. Buddhist temple in the mountains. My journey began in spring when my heart prayed for salvation. I decided to enter the Buddhist temple where Li Cheng lives a pure life. All summer, I trudged wet roads, leaving villages and memories behind. By autumn, I reached the foothills and labored upward as colored leaves swirled down. Breathless, I looked up and saw peak against peak against peak, and the narrow road disappearing into mist and snow. Now, at the beginning of winter, I have reached Li Chang's temple. Barren winds have stripped the trees. Green trees have become thorn trees. They are skeletons clinging to dead rock, Their branches are the shattered bones. The temple rises in its dark beauty from a nearby summit. A stone slab marks the memory of my friend. I cry with the 10,000 beings. This one may be understood to be somebody who is spending a lifetime on such a journey. Hence, they arrive in winter. And, it isn't what as it had been. Do you have a word or phrase to offer that would support poetry, or elicit it, or encourage it?
Branches.
Branches? By the way, the last time I asked you, your word was mountains, which is the theme for this time.
Yeah, thank you.
I will offer this phrase of mine: the softer light of a dying day.
Did you ask for a phrase or a word? Did I misunderstand?
Yeah, either an offering by each poet of a word or phrase.
Something came to me. I think it was this morning or last night. Midsummer Moon.
That's awesome. Hey. And maybe, like you'd said, these can all go in a hat or something at some point, because, do you want to read the acrostic for Mountain that we did?
Did we do it?
I think we did.
Sure.
Do you have it? Did you write it in your phone?
No. I think you have it in your Evernote.
Well, I know I have the one I wrote.
Oh, I didn't do one. I kept getting stuck at O and U.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll just read it then. I was trying to something for each of us. I was thinking of transitioning into reading our own poetry. So this is an acrostic, meaning the first line starts with a letter of the word mountains in order. So sort of like an anagram style poem. And this is for mountains. Monk sipping tea above the quiet hooling holler of cloud. Out of time above the trees, surveying red dust. Under stars, under sky shadows, and undervalued. No one to speak of truth, only stones echoing in bones. Truth, if she lives, might rest here a time, unbothered but welcome. Another ago passes with each iron pot of tea. I strain to see the one camouflaged in the open, alone eternity. No one seen, no one looking back. Silence from the peak of wisdom. It's interesting that silence came up a number of times in the poems about mountains.
Yeah.
And then also that peak of wisdom thing. Kind of interesting, I think. lost where we were. So I guess I'll read a couple about mountains, and then we'll offer one for a theme for next session. So I have a series of poems that I call plain poetry. The idea is to be a wordplay of ordinary, plain, but also plains, as in definitely not mountains. So I like to think about mountains, write about mountains, and I have a real calling to them, particularly in the hermit sage ideal of a mountaintop hermit. But I've never lived among the mountains, so I call this series mountainless poetry, also known as plain poetry. So I just kind of opened the whole bunch of them, but maybe I'll just kind of randomly see if one of them works for us. In a Taoist immortal, the term is xian, but it's a merger of the character for a human and a mountain. When they're put together into one new term, it's a Taoist immortal. So Ren, Shen is xian. Anyway. So, here we go. I've no jug of wine, though a moth has alit on my brow. I've no hermitage, though the summer breeze scours and clears my between these ears. I've no mountaintop, no crane, I am turtleless. I have my cooling tea, I have the dead poets I live with, I have their poetry. I have my inchotry, my rasp-edged poetry. Monks, hermits, sages, haunt happily my heart and pages.
Haunt happily my heart.
Haunt happily my heart, yeah. Thank you. Clouds over canopy, clouds in my coffee. The world's a swirl with me between, smiling. It feels similar to the previous one with the haunt happily, I think. Presiding over my demising, I soak tea leaves, uncurl in the heat. In time, no I, return to the timeless, slaked. A couple more,
Yeah, whatever.
if it feels like a good time. There's probably 100 of these. So. Twin mountains eroding, one a sibling for a lifetime, the other a brother for this peon. Each wearing out, each wearing the other as overcoat. Only one mountain works to be mountainous. So much yet to learn, but I'm worn out. That one one's sort of more meant to be read on the page because there's some wordplay in it that is not going to come across the way I'm reading it anyway. But that's alright, that happens on a lot of mine. So this is called Riderless. Hermit tea, lonely poetry. Am I a hermit still if I don't write for me? I'm just gonna scroll to another one here. So this is called Soul Wang, and this is a type of Taoist meditation that's called sitting and forgetting, which now that I think about what we were talking about, does the mountain forget? So this is called Soul Wang. In the high valley, I make my sit and forget place. Truly though, my chit and regret place. My cushion, my tea, these pale wildflowers and the hauntings of my heart, the silhouetted geese and the tauntings of my mind, truly, though, the dauntings of my no-self. The winds blow up the slopings, the breeze pools, cool here in the dale. Each accomplished blade of grass, each of the 1,000 million sways now south, now easterly. Opinionless, the sheaves of green wither this, wither that, all bending, all pointing singly as one. I alone in this high mountain valley, somewhere above the clouds, somewhere beneath the peaks, am delighted by my opinions, tormented by my opinions. I sit, breezes, I sit, to wit. Maybe I'll finish with this one. This is called Failing My Tools. I'll read it and see if it feels like it's the end. High up here amid this cold and alone, my tools might best be forgiven if they've long since forgot that they deserve better. But the only lips my teacup have known are my blurbering too. The only ink my brush has known has been that scolded into some sorrowful form on this not mulberry rock. The only skin this robe has known was that of this persistent perpetrator. It's yet to feel a worthy monk. The only sages known is the sage I've crumbled into my pestle, in pitiably inchoate mockery of an apothecary when my knee went turned and grew as big as my dreams. The only ears or heart my poems have reached up here in this thin air has been my own, source and resting place of my ignoble offerings. I forgive my cup. I forgive my robe. I forgive my brush. I forgive my flesh. It never knew better. It always deserved better. It never knew better. Thank you. That was just a few from the Mountainless Poetry. So, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Luna Wolf. Our newsletter went out yesterday, and our our next session, the theme is grief. So perhaps you'll come prepared with some thoughts or writings or phrases on grief, and I guess we can look forward to that. Thank you. Thank you, Lona.